Hey folks, my name is Jen, and today we are going to talk about what I read in May. So, I actually did not read that much in May. It's crazy. I started off the month, I thought, pretty strong. Finished a book fairly quickly into the month, and then thought, yeah, I can do this, and I read bits and pieces of books here and there, but then the month just got away from me. I don't fully know how that happened, because it felt like I was reading in lots of different things but not really making any solid progress. And then on top of it, I'm also trying to catch up because I'm so behind on like YouTube videos. I'm trying to catch up on that too, but it just felt like even though I was like making progress on different things, I wasn't fully making progress. And I think the problem might be that a lot of time I doom scrolled, which don't do that, folks. It's not fun. Things that I did do, things that I did read this month. So I did indeed manage to read 3 books this month. I have them right here. And I read bits and pieces in other books. I read a little bit in Don Quixote. I read a little bit of Maniac Magee by Jerry Spinelli. I read like halfway through Stormfront, so one of the Dresden Files books. I read a little bit in Great Expectations, a little bit in, not really a little bit, I say like 1 chapter in Count of Monte Cristo, and I also found an ebook online. It's just on like, I think I found it on either Project Gutenberg or Internet Archive, but it's an ebook of more Dumas, because I just found out fairly recently that Alexandre Dumas also wrote crime. He wrote about crime. Dickens also wrote about crime, and he wrote like articles and stuff like that early on, but he might have continued later. And then apparently also Alexandre Dumas also wrote about crime of the day. So I found this book, and I forget what it's called exactly. I should have looked that up. It's in French, but translated I think it's like Crimes of the Century, basically. And it goes in depth, him writing about these terrible crimes that occurred, that were like big name crimes that happened at the time. So I started reading a little bit of that ebook. I was considering DNFing the other ebook that I had been reading previously, which was The Night Circus, but then I realized that, you know what, I haven't given that a fair chance. I read like 3 chapters or something, but that was like back in, I want to say February or March. I haven't touched it in a while, so I'm like, I'm gonna try to give that another good college try, you know, before I decide whether or not I'm gonna DNF it. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, it's just, it's not exactly my cup of tea, but I'm gonna try to do it anyway. So I might have an update next month about that book, whether or not I DNF'd it or whether or not I was successful in reading it. Night Circus is part of my project, my own personal project. So probably a video that I'm gonna do hopefully later this year. It might end up being a next year thing because I'm having trouble with really staying on task with reading this year. But I've talked about it before, is my project of figuring out if I'm too judgmental about books that I have said mostly on here, but also some books that I've talked to other people about that, oh, I'd never fucking read that, no, it's trash. It's me basically figuring out, am I actually too judgmental about this book, or am I just correct in the fact that it might be right for some people but it's not right for me, kind of idea is what I'm going through. Mixed so far. I've had some books I've tried again that I've DNF'd, and then I've had some books that I've tried again or tried it for the first time, and I had such a good time. And I'm going to talk about one of those first, which is the one fantasy that I read this month, which was The Return of the King by Tolkien. So this is the last book in the Lord of the Rings. Man, guys, when I was reading this, I was like, man, this is a really thick book. And then realized that this is the book, and this is the appendices. So that's fun. And not only are the appendices, they're the appendices for the entire series, which I did not realize at the time. So there were some things that I was wondering about, and I probably should have flipped through these first and realized that, oh, some of my questions will be answered if I looked in here. It's fine. So if you don't know anything about Lord of the Rings, so how to explain this succinctly. There's a ring. Big Baddie wants the ring. Give him ultimate power, you know. Some hobbits ended up with the ring. There was Bilbo Baggins who ended up with the ring in The Hobbit, but they didn't fully understand what the ring was, only that it was ancient and special, and also if you put it on, it makes you invisible, sort of. So, Gandalf, the wizard, realized early on in Fellowship of the Ring, so book 1 in the trilogy, that this ring wasn't just like a magical ring, it was like the magical ring. It was one of these rings that was wrought years and years and years and years ago and has like supreme power, but over time this ring became corrupted by evil, and so the ring itself is kind of evil, and like I said, the big baddie wants it because ultimate power. So yeah, crazy stuff. So now Bilbo has given up the ring because he's had it for too long, and he also wants to go hang out, you know, chilling with the elves, basically. So he ends up bequeathing the ring and a bunch of his stuff, pretty much, to his relative, his young cousin, Frodo. And I say young, they're like 50, because the lifespans of hobbits is a lot different. But, so Frodo has the ring now, doesn't kind of fully understand things until Gandalf comes by and is like, yo, we need to talk about the ring. But he ends up setting out on a journey with his servant slash friend, Sam, and then his like cousins, Merry and Pippin. And they end up setting off. They're going to go to the elves with Gandalf and figure out what to do about this ring. Everybody has a council about it, talks about it, and they realize we gotta do something with it. Where can we put it? Where can we hide it? What do we do? And they decide somebody has to destroy it. We just have to straight up destroy it. This is the only way. It's the only way of guaranteeing that this evil baddie never gets it and is never able to use it, basically. And we also can't trust people, anyone, to have it, because are they corruptible? Probably. It's evil. It has to be destroyed. And they're arguing about who is going to destroy, who's going to take the responsibility, how are we going to do this. And Frodo, tiny little hobbit, that a lot of people either discount hobbits or have never heard of hobbits before, because they're just kind of unobtrusive and they keep to themselves and they're just kind of like off and everything. And he says, I'll take it. Gotta take it to Mordor and throw it into the volcano and destroy it, because that's where it was made and that's why I can undo it. And he's like, I'll go, I'll take it. And that's it. They're on a journey to take it ultimately to Mordor and destroy the ring once and for all. Meanwhile, you have the bad guy who's searching for the ring. You have political intrigue shit going on. You have people like, are we fighting each other? Are we fighting? No, we're fighting against the bad guys, trying to get people together to like fight the evil. And a lot of stuff going on. There's lost kings, there's unlikely friendships, there's everything. So good. So a lot of stuff happens, a lot of shit happens. Ship, Two Towers, and then The Return of the King. So This one is split in like who it's following again, seeing what's going on with Pippin, who Pippin's involved with. Then we're seeing who Merry is involved with. We're seeing a little bit of Aragorn, a little bit of Legolas and Gimli, whose friendship still brings me so much joy. I feel like I've talked a lot and I haven't fully expressed things about this book. As you can see, so many pages that I've turned down because there's quotes in here that I want to write down somewhere, things that I want to remember. This was awesome. So much action. Like I said, it was split between Pippin doing things, Merry doing things, a little bit of Aragorn. We get some more Faramir, my new book boyfriend. Love him. Eowyn, badass, even more badass. Like I could see she was being kind of cool, and then I wasn't sure what parts of the movies were in like an actual adaptation and what part, like, I wasn't sure. I wasn't 100% sure how things would be, because you know, some of these older like fantasy books, like you look at Chronicles of Narnia or something, and it's like, okay, we've got Lucy's got like the healing thing, that's cool, whatever. And then Susan's got like the archery, but women shouldn't be in battle. Okay, fuck you. Then you read this, and Tolkien's just like, no, I was gonna go and she's gonna fuck some shit up. So, this was great. Loved it. Loved her a lot. Love Merry and Pippin so much. Aragorn, awesome. Faramir, love him. Legolas and Gimli, again, their friendship, amazing. And then the other sections of it, which admittedly were a little bit harder to get through, I guess, were the sections following Frodo and Sam. And that's only because there's like less action, I guess, with Frodo and Sam. You get a lot of like walking and talking and suffering, lots of suffering. Whereas everything else is like, we're having some arguments, we're fighting, this thing's going on now. Who is gonna do, like, all up in everything? Oh my god, this terrible thing happened. What are we gonna do? Are we gonna get there in time? What's happening? But then in like with Frodo and Sam, they're kind of fighting their own battles. Technically, they're kind of like, do we still trust Smeagol? Gollum. Do we not? What are we doing? We have to get out. We have to be in disguises. Do we not be in disguises? We have to get up the mountain. Oh my god, suffering, suffering, suffering. We're out of food. We're out of water. We're walking. We're hiking. We're crawling now. Things are a little more slower paced. It's a lot of suffering. Not a lot going on otherwise than that. So that those sections were kind of dragged a little bit just because kind of the amount of description of the mental, physical suffering and everything going on trying to get up to the mountain, up to Mordor and stuff. But still, like, I don't know. I don't care what anyone says. Frodo and Sam are in love with each other. And that's it. That's it. You cannot convince me otherwise. I do not care to hear your arguments. But this was, despite those slow bits, this was still a lot of fun. I still was on the edge of my seat because I've seen the movies, but it was years and years ago. So I remember like some scenes here and there, but I don't fully remember other things, and some characters are like not in the movies, or I don't think are a part of anything like that, so I don't really, know what's going to happen. Are they going to live? Are they going to die? What's going to happen? Is this going to differ from the movie, which the ending does a little bit? There's actually a really cool section in here about the aftermath of everything that is not in the movies, which I totally understand why it's probably not. Because maybe it wasn't necessary, and also it would drag it out a little bit longer, but I thought it was fucking awesome and badass and showed a lot of character growth for the hobbits, and I loved it so much. I had such a good time with this series, which again, it feels so weird to say that this was like so good and how much I enjoyed it, how much I love the characters, how much I can't wait for us do a rewatch of the movies, because now that I've reread the books and can understand more things going on, and like, it's crazy to say that when, you know, I spent the majority of my life thinking I'm just never going to be able to read these because of the amount of times I have attempted to read this and just not been able to get through it. So yeah, I guess this was just the perfect time and place for reading Lord of the Rings. It's like, it feels like you're gonna fly through it, but at the same time it's so dense that it's like a slog, but it's like a slog that you're enjoying at the same time. That was that series. I'm really glad to be, I'm like sad to be done with it, but also really glad to be done with it, because that was dense. Like I said, it was a lot. And I also read two nonfictions that are related to travel, or I guess travel, but also mostly living in different countries is more what it's about. Which was the first book that I read this month, and it was Perfume from Provence. This is by Lady Winifred Fortescue, and this is a book, it's actually one of, I think she wrote 3 memoirs about living in France, maybe. So she and her husband, let me see, what time is it? The 30s. Okay. Her and her husband decided to move to France in the early 30s. And her husband, I think, is involved in like history. Somehow I can't remember exactly what he did, but he was very involved in like history and antiquities and stuff like that. So that was like his whole interest and his whole thing. And she'd been a writer, and she'd done some other work. I think she might have acted or something. I remember, because I also ended up looking her up on Wikipedia, because I was like, I want some more information about this lady. I think she did some acting or something like that in her younger days. She got married, not really that late in life, but slightly later, I think, than people normally did get married at the time. And end up moving to France. They find this old farmhouse, basically, and they purchase it and expand upon it. So it deals a lot with that, like chronologically going through everything. So from the building process of expanding the place before they actually moved in, and after they moved in, they had a lot of contractors and local people helping them add on to their house, fix their garden areas. They also have interactions with the gardener, they have interactions with their household staff. A lot of really interesting things. You have some stuff about the local town and just the people in general around and getting along with the local people, which I think was kind of interesting. So this book actually reminded me a lot of Under the Tuscan Sun. But the thing about Under the Tuscan Sun, so the movie is awesome. I really, really love the movie. It makes me really happy. It's this woman who has gotten a sudden divorce. And friends were going to go on this trip throughout Italy and focusing on like Tuscany, and they end up saying, hey, take the ticket, why don't you go? And she ends up going on this like tour trip, and on a whim, when they stop in this little town, she sees a like sale ad for this little cottage and buys it. People think she's crazy, and she basically moves to Tuscany, and it's like, and the whole movie is like her trying to find love again, trying to find herself, rebuilding this house, making a found family, which you know me, guys, I love a found family. Making like a found family with the contractors, and it's such a sweet movie. I love it so much. The book is very different. It's a nonfiction. It is about a woman. She's not divorced. She actually moves there with her partner, and they remake the place, but it's less heart in the book. It's more rich people problems of, oh my god, they're not able to move my granite sink into the house without breaking it. Whatever shall I do? Or just going on and on about what a big foodie she is and like how she has to have the perfect space to entertain her rich ass friends for the weekend whenever they come visit or something like that. So it's a little more of a pretentious read, and I didn't enjoy it as much as the movie. It's one of those cases where the movie is way better than the book. This reminded me of that, but not so much like that book, but a little bit more like the movie. This has a lot of heart in it. There were some times where I didn't fully like how Lady Fortescue was writing things, mostly in the way that she was talking about the locals. There was most definitely this feel to it of, well, I am a superior, richer British person moving to the country, and now I have to deal with the foibles and quirks of these poor peasants who don't speak English. Like that kind of feel to it, which was a little bit annoying, and I wasn't fully on board with it the whole time because I was like, doesn't that doesn't sound that great. You're really stereotyping people, and it's not. It's something that doesn't feel quite right about it. But as the book continued, I kind of warmed to her writing a little bit because she does have some really beautiful descriptions of the land, of the house. It's a nice little snapshot of a part of history. So we're looking at provincial France in the 30s and 40s, and it's just fascinating to look at how they did things, especially maybe how different they did things in rural France than they did what she and her husband were probably used to in England, and just looking at very, very different things. There is a little bit, I think, of a culture shock there for them because places close down at certain times of the day and things are very different. Everybody's a little more lackadaisical. Is that the word I'm looking for? I think it might be the word I'm looking for about responsibilities and about different things like that. And even though I didn't initially really like some of the way she was writing about people, it kind of felt like as she got to know people more, it was kind of funny to see the personality of different characters, like these different people in her life, like their gardener, like their maids, especially their main, like, maid. And looking at different things like that, their neighbors, different people they got to know. So that was kind of really good. And this, like I said, follows chronologically their time from building, developing their garden, different things, a little bit about their marriage, her and her husband, some business stuff, driving a car in this place, which is hilarious. I also liked a bit how feisty and independent she was. A lot of times things were pretty funny, and it was interesting to learn about, like I said, different cultural things, different like festivals and harvesting stuff from that time. The ending got me a little bit too because in real life, Lady Winifred and her husband moved to France, lived there quite happily for a few years, and then unfortunately her husband's health diminished and he passed away. So there's also some major like emotions towards the end of this book too. Will say, is it the best like travel living in another country book I've ever read? No, but it was a sometimes sweet, sometimes quirky look at a particular snapshot in a place in a time. That if you're into that, if you're into looking at, well, how do people live in this particular area at this particular time, I think it's a good snapshot for that. Travel writing of the earlier part of the 20th century is a lot different than travel writing now. But yeah, if you're looking for that, this is probably a good thing for that, but it's a little bit, yeah. So, sometimes her views on people that live there is a little bit much, but like I said, things kind of improve later on. So, yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't say what I rated any of these. This Return of the King was 5. Perfume from Provence was like a 4-star. And then the last book that I managed to read in May was another nonfiction, and that was Abroad in Japan by Chris Broad. This is a book, it's 10 Years in the Land of the Rising Sun, and I talked about this when I got it, I believe. This is written by the YouTuber Chris Broad. He is a British dude that ended up moving to Japan. He was only supposed to be there originally for a couple of years with the JET program, which basically is a program that takes people who speak English, like that's their native tongue, and sends them to Japan to teach English or assist with teaching English in schools. I think it's with, I can't quite remember, I think it's with like all over the area, but oftentimes people end up in like rural areas trying to help teach English in those schools, but I think some people also end up in like, you know, Tokyo and stuff like that too. It started out as that experience of him being there to do that, and then basically finding opportunities to stay in Japan. So this covers his time from his experience in the JET program. There's a lot about that. The culture shock, trying to learn Japanese, his experiences with the JET program, with traveling around, and the connections that he made with people, including his friendship with Natsuki, who's like his best friend, and just lots of cool stuff. If you watch his videos are, the channel is called Abroad in Japan, and he originally started the channel. There's also a lot about his YouTube experiences as well. He started the channel originally just basically because he had always been interested in film and making film and stuff like that. But then he also decided to make these specific videos to just kind of deal with his culture shock. Kind of like, I don't know, it seemed almost like the screaming into the void kind of idea, which is like why I started a booktube thing, was because I was not having like a culture shock experience, but it was like the start of the pandemic, and my brain was too full of things, and I felt like I just wanted to scream into the void for a little bit about books and distract myself, and here we are. And he basically started like, hey, I just want to scream into the void about the culture shock of moving from Britain to rural Japan, learning different things. Like I think one of his first videos was a tour of his tiny apartment and how that worked, figuring out all of a sudden that, oh shit, I actually have to pay my bills at the convenience store. That's weird. That's not how that works anywhere else. And just different like things like that. He did some food tastings, he did varying things, and as time has gone along, he's made more connections, made more videos, gone viral a couple of times. He's been on news articles, and this covers basically all of that, like his growth from being this dude who's just have wanted to come to Japan and is trying to deal with the culture shock and trying to make friends and trying to be a part of the community, to staying in Japan, actually having a job, getting connections, being involved with the tourism over there, and also making documentary films. He had a documentary about the Fukushima, that like nuclear issue that happened after the that bad hurricane in like 2011. He made like a documentary about the Fukushima, I think it's the exclusion zone, where they've been like trying to like decontaminate things and get people to move back slowly, and just covering that whole everything. He had another documentary that he did about the efforts of saving another like fishing village after the hurricane as well, and dealing with he got to meet Ken Watanabe for that, which, if you don't know Ken Watanabe, he's like the biggest Japanese film star ever, I think, to the point that people in the Western community also probably know him. If you don't know his name, you have seen his face in things. He's been in a lot of movies. And the dude's apparently like awesome. And he basically adopted this like town. He went there to help with the efforts of cleanup and stuff like that, and ended up adopting the town, and he's done like a lot for it. It's so awesome. So yeah, so Chris has done like documentaries trying to like document awesome, like the resilience of Japan, and like bring attention to different things. He's made videos, a lot of different videos. It's not just about like, hey, bring more tourists to this area and save these like towns that are struggling. He also does stuff about like the things that aren't as great about Japan. Like, currently there's issues with tourism. There's now different areas where tourists aren't allowed to go because they've acted like asshats. And so it's like the edged sword basically of that, where it's like, yeah, that makes sense because unfortunately a lot of people have come and acted like complete asshats and been disrespectful. But then the other side of it is, yeah, but then they're like being like, there's literal restaurants that will kick you out for not being Japanese, and it's like, well, that ain't great either. So it's like that kind of thing. He makes videos about kind of nuanced situations like that, or like talking about the education system or tourism, or uh, trying to bring light to these towns that are like shrinking, and the population is all old people that are slowly dying off because the young people are fleeing to like Tokyo or to other countries and stuff. And it's like his videos have a lot more heart to it, and have a lot like, well, I mean, they've always had heart to it, but a lot more serious topics and stuff like that. But then he'll also make absolutely ridiculous travel videos or silly videos with his friends about trying to do like food contests, or he's had this whole series a couple of times, Journey Across Japan, where they bike across different parts of Japan, and it's really awesome. And he goes into that stuff a little bit. Oh, like I said, a lot of the book has to deal with his first like year or two staying there, the jet program, trying to like assimilate to the culture, learning different parts of it and everything like that. And then yeah, there's a lot more of it that deals with his kind of finding different places to settle, and his friendships, and the different opportunities that he has managed to get through having the YouTube channel. And yeah, it's really awesome. This was such a good book. If you have watched his channel at all, another bonus to reading this is that the entire time I was reading it, I could, like, you can tell that he wrote this. Like, he definitely wrote that. Like, I'm sure he probably had like he's had like, I think he acknowledges like his editor and stuff like that. He's had people help him with this, but it's not one of those like celebrity memoir things where it's like they wrote it, but sometimes they actually did write it, and then other times it's like they wrote it, but there's actually a ghostwriter that helped with the majority of it, because yeah. In this case, it's like, no, 100% he wrote this, because when I was reading this, I could hear his voice in my head saying these words, because it sounds exactly like how his scripts are when he does his videos. So that was really kind of an added fun bonus too. But I just really love this, because I really love his channel. My husband and I have been watching his channel since, let's see, he started it in like 2012, 2013, something like that, I think. And I don't think we have been watching it since then, but we've at least been watching it together since we started living together, which was like 2015, I want to say. So we've at least been watching his videos since then. And we love them. We always watch them like right away. And they're always like really funny or really interesting, or we get to see parts of Japan that and talk about it and be like, man, if we ever manage to get there, we should go there, or that's really cool, or you know, different things like that, because they're so entertaining and fascinating and often really freaking funny. So yeah, I really loved this book. I loved getting more insight into the background information of his like friendships, of how he got started, about the teaching and stuff like that, and a little more insight into him as a person. And it was also just really interesting to get more information about what it's like to move to and live in Japan. So yeah, I really loved this, and this was 5 stars and is the best travel book I've ever read. That was it, guys. That was all of the books that I read in May. Not that much, but quantity. Quantity over quality. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for always watching. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, please consider doing so, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.